I was chopping onions, the sharp scent stinging my eyes, when my phone vibrated violently against the kitchen counter. At first, I ignored it. I was too focused on getting the turkey ready, the stuffing prepared just so, but then the screen flashed the bank's name. My heart skipped. Banks don't call you for good news in the middle of Thanksgiving prep. Mr. Matthews, someone drained your accounts. The voice said on the other end, clinical, almost mocking. My hands froze around the knife. Drained. Every penny gone. I felt my chest tighten, a cold spike of fear mixed with disbelief. There must be a mistake, I whispered, more to myself than to the caller. But the hesitation in my voice betrayed me. I had never felt so exposed, so suddenly vulnerable in my own life. I set the knife down, the onions forgotten. My mind raced. How could this happen? My accounts were secure, or so I thought. Automatic alerts, multi-factor verification, the whole fortress I'd built around my money. It hadn't mattered. Someone had found a way through. Someone close. I could feel it in my gut. Banks don't make mistakes like this, people do. And then the betrayal hit me harder than the news itself. Not the theft, no, the humiliation. Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be about family, about warmth, laughter, normalcy. Now, every simmering pot and roasting tray felt like a cruel joke. Someone had invaded my life at the most personal level, and I couldn't even imagine who. I sank onto the kitchen chair, my mind spinning with faces I trusted. My cousin, who had always seemed too interested in my finances. My assistant, always hovering, too curious. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was intimate. Deep, it cut through my confidence like the knife I'd abandoned on the counter. The voice on the phone continued, reading transaction after transaction, and I couldn't help but listen, as if by absorbing the details I could somehow grasp control. But the numbers blurred, and what stayed with me was the sensation of being utterly powerless. I realized then that this wasn't just money. It was trust. And someone had stolen that too. I looked around my kitchen, the smell of onions and roasting turkey filling the air, and felt a cold, simmering rage. They thought they could destroy me quietly. They thought I wouldn't notice. They were wrong. If betrayal is a blade, this one cut me to the bone. And now it was time to decide if I would bleed, or if I would strike back. I couldn't move. The turkey hissed in the oven, the stuffing threatened to burn, and yet I sat frozen, staring at my phone, replaying the bank call over and over in my mind. Each word was a hammer, each transaction a nail into my chest. Someone had violated my life. Someone close. The thought wouldn't leave me. Mr. Matthews, we recommend freezing your accounts immediately. The banker had said. I could barely hear the rest. My voice shook as I whispered, freeze everything, now. But even as I did, a creeping dread slithered through me. Freezing accounts wouldn't undo what was done. It wouldn't tell me who did it. It wouldn't restore the trust that had been shredded in a single afternoon. I paced the kitchen, knife forgotten, eyes darting to the family photos lining the counter. Faces smiling, unaware. My stomach twisted. Could it have been someone at the family dinner? My mind rejected it, yet suspicion dug in like claws. I hated that I thought it. I hated that I had to think it. But the reality was unavoidable. Betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was alive, breathing in my house, and laughing silently as I prepared mashed potatoes. I tried calling my cousin, the one who always knew too much about my accounts. His phone went straight to voicemail. My assistant's texts were eerily polite, business-like. Even my wife's sister, who had stopped by unexpectedly earlier, was now unreachable. It was like a shadow had descended over my world. Every connection, every person I trusted, suddenly seemed like a potential traitor. Anger surged, wild and sharp. But beneath it, a heavier, more dangerous emotion settled in, fear of being powerless. Not just financially, but psychologically. When trust is broken, you don't just lose money, you lose certainty, safety, the foundation of your life. And someone had pulled that foundation from under me. I returned to the oven, touching the handle as if grounding myself. Thanksgiving dinner, my own home, my own tradition, had become a theater of humiliation. The smell of roasting turkey, once comforting, now mocked me. And in that moment, I realized the depth of what had been done. This wasn't random. It was precise, personal. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, waiting, counting on me to crumble. And in that chilling instant, I promised myself I wouldn't. I sank into the living room chair, my hands trembling, the phone still clutched as if it were a lifeline. Every beep, every vibration made my heart jump. I couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal, about how someone had managed to infiltrate not just my finances, but my entire sense of security. And the worst part, the feeling that I had known it was coming all along, but had ignored the warning signs. I replayed every interaction over the last few months. The late night texts from my assistant, oddly insistent questions about my travel schedule, my cousin asking too casually about my credit cards during family dinners. Even my wife's sister, always too interested in my investments, dropping off helpful documents with knowing smiles. I had waved them off. I had trusted them. And now I felt like a fool. Anger flared hotter than fear. I wanted to scream, to confront someone, anyone. But who? Every suspicion was tangled in doubt. I couldn't accuse without proof, and yet doing nothing felt like surrender. My mind twisted in loops, imagining confrontations, confessions, lies spilling out, and none of it was satisfying. The sense of powerlessness was suffocating. I glanced at the half-prepared Thanksgiving dinner. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The cranberry sauce had boiled over. Every small, mundane task now felt absurd, meaningless. Cooking, cleaning, pretending life was normal, it was a charade. And yet something in me refused to crumble. This betrayal was personal. Deeply personal. Whoever did this thought I'd collapse quietly. They thought they could humiliate me without consequence. They were wrong. I realized then that fear and rage alone wouldn't be enough. I needed clarity. I needed strategy. Blind vengeance would only expose me further, make me predictable. But the thought of biding my time, observing, planning, that sent a thrill through me. For the first time since the bank call, I felt a spark of control. I leaned back, letting the silence of my house envelop me, and thought about the lesson in all this. Betrayal isn't just about stolen money. It's about stolen trust, stolen certainty. And when that happens, you have two choices: collapse under the weight, or rise with a calculated edge sharper than any blade. I knew which path I would take. The problem was, I had no idea where to start. The people closest to me, the ones I loved and trusted, had become suspects. And somewhere, someone was smiling at the chaos they'd unleashed. I spent that night awake, pacing through the house like a predator circling its prey. The turkey was long forgotten, the stuffing hardened in the oven, but my mind was alive with one relentless thought: whoever had done this would pay. Every detail from the bank call replayed in my head, every transaction, every timestamp, every anomaly. They had left clues, whether intentionally or not, and I intended to follow them all. I started with my network. My cousin, my assistant, my wife's sister, all had access, in varying degrees, to my finances. Each had a pattern, a rhythm, a vulnerability I could exploit. I didn't jump to accusations. That would be amateurish. No, I needed patience, observation, and a meticulous record of their movements. Revenge demanded precision. It demanded intelligence. Emotion alone wouldn't cut it. I opened my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I drafted spreadsheets, cross-referencing every financial activity, every visit, every conversation I could remember. The late night calls, the sudden interest in my investments, the unusual favors, they were all pieces of a puzzle, and I was determined to solve it. I reminded myself to stay calm. The world believed in surface appearances, in polite interactions, in trust. I would exploit that. While everyone continued their lives believing they were untouchable, I would be invisible. I would watch. I would wait. And when the time came, every move they had made would be used against them. I also realized I needed allies, people they wouldn't suspect. A few contacts from work who owed me favors, a discreet investigator recommended by a friend, a digital expert who could track transactions without leaving a trace. They would feed me information, quietly, like whispers in the dark. Every piece of intel would bring me closer to uncovering the traitor. By the time I finally sank into bed, exhaustion clawing at my eyelids, I had a plan forming, a blueprint for retribution that wasn't rash or violent, but surgical. It was cold, calculated, and utterly personal. And yet, even as I drifted into restless sleep, a flicker of doubt crept in. Could I really trust my instincts? Could I differentiate paranoia from reality? Every betrayal, every hidden lie, had to be untangled before I struck. Otherwise, I risked destroying not just them, but myself in the process. I awoke the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The first step of my plan would be small, almost imperceptible, but it would begin the unraveling. I would bait the shadow who thought they were invisible. I began with small, almost invisible maneuvers. Nothing aggressive, nothing overt, just nudges that would force the culprit to reveal themselves. I sent a subtle email from a dummy account, pretending to alert my financial advisor that I'd noticed unusual patterns. The language was casual, professional, yet hinted at awareness. It wasn't a threat. It was a lure. Then I watched. Every response, every hesitation, every delayed reply became data. My cousin, usually quick to text back, now paused too long. My assistant, who always answered instantly, suddenly had excuses, vague and nervous. Even my wife's sister, who had always been calm and charming, seemed off. I felt the pulse of guilt radiating like heat waves from a hidden fire. I recorded every detail meticulously. Dates, times, subtle tone changes, behavioral shifts. I treated it like evidence in a criminal investigation. And in the silence of my home, preparing dinner as if life went on normally, I felt a perverse satisfaction. They thought they had shaken me. They thought I was powerless. Yet every action I took, every small trap I laid, turned their confidence into anxiety. I also tested digital traces. Every login attempt, every redirected transaction, every shadow of movement left by the thief online was a breadcrumb. I didn't have to act violently. I didn't need confrontation yet. The plan was psychological, a pressure cooker. I would tighten the screws slowly, invisibly, until the weight of their own mistakes forced a crack. And then it happened. A slip. A casual comment from my cousin over the phone. I saw something weird on your account the other day, but I didn't think it mattered. My stomach tightened. The hesitation, the vagueness, it was the first tangible sign of guilt. They were watching me, feeling the heat, unsure if I knew. I held my breath, letting the silence stretch. I could almost hear the gears turning in their head. They believed they had the upper hand. They believed I was the victim in this story, waiting to react emotionally. But I wasn't. I was the observer, the strategist. And now they were nervous, vulnerable. That night, as the kitchen lights dimmed and the turkey cooled, I realized the power had shifted. The balance had moved, just slightly but unmistakably. They didn't know it yet, but I was in control. And control is everything in revenge. The slip my cousin had made haunted me for hours. I replayed it over and over, dissecting every word, every pause, every inflection. The moment was delicate. Too much pressure too soon, and the trail could vanish. But too little, and the opportunity would fade. I needed to escalate carefully, surgically. I started leaving small, accidental traces of my own. A USB stick left on the kitchen counter labeled personal finance notes. A draft email to an imaginary law firm left open on my laptop. Each move was designed to provoke curiosity, to tempt the guilty party to peek where they shouldn't. I could almost see them, their eyes darting over my shoulder, hands shaking as they decided whether to intervene. And they did. My assistant, normally confident and composed, accessed the USB within hours. I didn't confront him. I didn't even watch. I simply logged it. Every click, every file opened was a confession in digital form. Meanwhile, my cousin called, nervously. Hey, I noticed some changes. Thought I should ask you first. His tone was careful, measured, but I heard the tremor underneath. Fear. Guilt. The subtle shift that told me my plan was working. At dinner, I watched them closely. The family room smelled of roasted turkey and cranberry sauce, a familiar warmth undercut by tension. Every casual laugh, every offhand remark, felt like a challenge. I smiled politely, hiding the storm inside. I was a master of patience now. They didn't see the strategy, the observation, the pressure building behind my calm facade. I realized something crucial. Revenge wasn't just about punishing them. It was about dismantling the illusion of safety, the belief that they could cross me and remain untouched. Each small revelation, each micro-slip was a lesson in humility for them. I wasn't hasty, I was deliberate. Every move pushed them closer to the inevitable confession without a single explosive confrontation. By the time dessert was served, I had mapped out the next phase. Evidence gathered, behavior monitored, psychological pressure mounting. Each piece fit into a pattern, a mosaic of betrayal slowly revealing the full picture. And in that moment, I understood the cruel elegance of patience. Revenge, when executed methodically, was far more satisfying than rage. But the question lingered in my mind, sharp as a knife had I misjudged someone else entirely. Was the true betrayer still watching from the shadows, waiting for me to make the wrong move? By now, the tension had become almost unbearable. Every phone call, every text, every glance across the table felt like a potential trap. My house, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a theater of observation. I watched, measured, recorded, and waited. The thrill of control was intoxicating, but it came with a constant, knowing fear that I might have overlooked someone, that the true betrayer was still slipping through the cracks. It began with subtle confessions. My cousin, in a rare moment of vulnerability, let slip a detail only the thief would know. My assistant, under pressure, admitted to seeing unusual logins that didn't make sense to him. Each revelation felt like a key turning in a lock. Piece by piece, the truth started to emerge. The puzzle I had been obsessively assembling for weeks was finally revealing the perpetrator. Then came the confrontation I had meticulously orchestrated. I invited my assistant over under the guise of helping with a post-Thanksgiving cleanup. I didn't accuse him outright. Instead, I let him see the logs, the USB activity, the careful monitoring I'd performed. His face went pale, his hands trembled. And in that moment, I realized the psychological power of observation. He knew I had him, but he didn't know what I would do next. It wasn't anger that I felt, it was justice, cold and precise. I allowed him to fumble, to justify, to excuse, and in doing so, he confessed more than I ever could have extracted through direct confrontation. And the final piece fell into place. The betrayal was not just opportunistic, it was deliberate, premeditated, personal. The money, the accounts, the invasion of trust, it had been calculated to humiliate me, to test my limits. As the dust settled, I confronted my cousin privately. His reaction mirrored my assistant's fear, shame, and a grudging acknowledgement of complicity. Family and colleagues, two worlds I had trusted implicitly, had crumbled under their own greed and curiosity. I felt the weight of their betrayal in every word, every pause, every shamed glance. The aftermath was surreal. Thanksgiving, once a celebration of family, had become a crucible that exposed every hidden motive, every secret desire, every act of cowardice. I had emerged not unscathed, but transformed, hardened, alert, and far more strategic than before. I sat alone in the quiet house after the storm of revelations. The turkey was cold, the dishes piled in the sink, but I didn't care. I had uncovered the truth. My assistant had manipulated the system. My cousin had facilitated small pieces of the betrayal, and my wife's sister had been the silent observer, complicit in her own subtle ways. Every face I had trusted carried a shadow of deceit. The web was complete, the culprits exposed, and the power had returned to me. But power without wisdom is dangerous. I didn't humiliate them publicly. I didn't enact petty revenge that would feed gossip. Instead, I restructured my finances, strengthened security, and ensured the betrayal would cost them credibility, trust, and opportunity. Their reputations, fragile, dependent on my silence, were now in their hands, teetering precariously. I had given them a lesson, one they would remember without me lifting a finger further. The psychological satisfaction was deeper than any material recompense. I realized revenge isn't just about the money lost, it's about reclaiming control, exposing the deception, and asserting your own resilience. I had walked through fire, measured every step, and emerged sharper, more aware, more cautious. I had learned that betrayal often comes from those closest to you, and the wounds it leaves are as much emotional as they are practical. Thanksgiving dinner, once a symbol of warmth and family, had become a crucible for my own evolution. I had been tested, humiliated, and yet I had not crumbled. I had watched, planned, and acted with precision. Every subtle move had counted. Every slip they made was a revelation. Every hesitation a window into their guilt. The lesson was clear: patience and observation are more powerful than anger, intelligence and strategy more effective than confrontation. As I cleared the last of the dishes, I felt a strange calm. The betrayal had ended, the perpetrators had paid, in ways beyond money, in ways that would haunt them quietly, and I had reclaimed my life. But the experience left an indelible mark. I would never be naive again. Trust would be earned, carefully measured, and never assumed. Reflection: revenge isn't chaos, it's control. True power lies in patience, observation, and the quiet reclaiming of what was stolen. Betrayal may scar you, but strategy heals you stronger than before. If this story resonated with you, please like if you felt the intensity of the betrayal, comment your thoughts on how you would handle such deception, and subscribe to Silent Revenge for more stories where betrayal isn't the end, it's only the beginning. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.